to midnight. I didn't feel like stopping for gas then, so on the way here, I was like, oh great, I'm still on E.
Oh yeah, my immediate light went on when I was on my way here too. I'm like, I got time, I'm good.
I do it all the time. All right, well, welcome to the InformTheVoteNJ Informational Fire District Forum. And first, thanks for taking the time to be here. I know everybody's busy. Some info might be a little redundant to some people, and then for other people, a lot of it may be new. As I've learned, special districts such as fire districts or mosquito districts, if you've ever heard of them, a lot of people don't pay attention to them. So hopefully by you guys being here and sharing a little recording on the internet, some people will learn a little bit more, not just about fire districts, but specifically here in Cumberland County. So again, thank you for being here. And again, just as like a little disclaimer, I'm just a private citizen who is poking his head around trying to learn about local politics and elections. So, especially for somebody like Casey being here, if something seems wildly off, I'm happy to be corrected. His expertise is greatly appreciated to be in the room. My basic methods are going through public records, attending meetings, conducting outreach, and just being persistent. So, obviously, the goal of the forum is to present some of the information in plain language for people like candidates or people in the public so that they can understand it very simply. And a lot of people in the public don't do this kind of research, so I think it'll be helpful, especially as we get further along. Fire districts are only for certain areas, whereas like a municipality would have its own dedicated fire company that maybe sometimes gets handled through the municipal government as opposed to a separate government entity. Oh, and also, there's only a handful of us here, so if you want to chime in at any point with questions, it's not like we're going to be interrupting each other the whole time or whatever, so feel free to chime in, and again, if something seems off, just let me know. So let's start with an explanation of what fire districts even are and where did they come from. So in early fire protection models, you just had neighbors and civics groups coming together and why don't you just explain it, Casey? Because you're better at that than I am.
Well, I mean, we've probably all seen like the old-fashioned movies back in the day where you'd have two guys on the back of a truck show up and they had bucket brigades, as they would call them, right? Where you just take buckets of water and you pass them down a line and put out a fire. But the way that, Benjamin Franklin actually started the first volunteer fire company.
Okay.
Before that, it was an insurance project where people would purchase fire insurance and the insurance companies would contract with paid fire departments and they would put watermarks on houses or fire marks. And if a house was on fire, the company would get sent out and they would only put out fires for houses that were insured. But it's kind of an essential public service, right? And people saw this, right? They're like, hey, if houses are burning down, we should really do something about that. And when everybody should have access to a service, it's typically when you bring it to the government, right? When it's, not everybody necessarily needs to have, an aesthetic windmill in their yard. So you're not going to have government take care of that. But when it's things that are generally considered necessities to the public, that's when you get the government involved and you start to figure out a way to handle it. Fire districts, you want to continue on there?
No, yeah, I mean, that was a very good explanation of that slide. And then we touched on municipal fire protection. Sometimes the municipalities handle it themselves. And then another point to highlight is the mutual aid aspect. So when you have a fire, say in Vineland, if it's a particularly big one, it's not just the Vineland Fire Company coming in. You'll have Mauricetown, Laurel Lake, and other districts throughout the county and beyond the county. Sometimes if you're near the county line, Cape May will help Cumberland will help Cape May, and all that kind of stuff.
If I may.
Sure.
So what you were saying about mutual aid and going beyond county lines, a good example of that is Cumberland, not Cumberland County, but the municipality of Cumberland, which is in the very north side. Well, Morris River Township is the municipality. One of their fire districts is Cumberland. So in the fire service, when you have an active fire, you have what's called a fire block, which are all the companies that are automatically dispatched. The Department of Fire Services requires that for an active fire, you have so many people there within a certain time period. And all of the companies have membership has dwindled to such a point that no one fire company, at least volunteer fire company, has the manpower to ensure that we can meet up to those state requirements. And so they dispatch what's called a fire block. And actually Morris River Township, from what I've been told from the chiefs of their companies, have actually switched their policies. So if there is a investigation for a fire, an actual fire reported, they automatically dispatch all 4 fire companies in that municipality.
Yeah, and for me, as an average guy just poking his head around, I would have no idea. You know, it's huge infrastructural problem, basic emergency service problem.
An important note for the municipal fire versus fire districts. So one of the big dividers between the two is when you have a municipal, so fire districts are developed by ordinance of municipalities when there's not a paid or part paid department. It's an option. A municipal fire is typically going to be a paid service, and it is going to be directly employed government, people that are employed directly by the municipality, be it the city of Millville, or be it, I can't tell you a single rural district around here that has paid fire, because it's astronomically expensive compared to what the total budget is, right? And if you consider the amount of people that you have to employ with benefits over the course of a year to the total budgets of any of the rural districts, you know, if you go around the Bayshore area from Stowe Creek all the way around to Morris River Township, their municipal budgets aren't a lot. I mean, there's not a whole heck of a lot of income that comes in. So fire districts versus municipal fire. Municipal fire, you have paid government employees. With fire districts, you're relying mainly on volunteers, actually solely on volunteers.
Right. And,
Well,
go ahead.
I remember mentioning to you when I was a child, our house burned down, and where I grew up in Maple Shade, it literally is the border of Burlington and Camden County, and Cherry Hill is a much bigger municipality than Maple Shade. I'm pretty sure, I don't know to this day because it's been 25 years since I lived in Maple Shade plus, but at least back then they were all volunteer. So we definitely, at my small little house that I grew up in, there was Cherry Hill Fire Department there as well. It was, you know, literally I could drive 2 blocks and I'd be in Cherry Hill. That's to how close we were to Burlington and Camden County. So I know full well that it's a multi-man job.
Cool. Thank you for the explanations. I think we already touched on why the fire districts were created, but just to reemphasize, it's a separate governance body that oversees the funding and making sure that the services are employed properly. One thing I'd like to point out, I already showed Terry, but the packets in front of you are meant to be a helpful resource for regular people in the public or candidates or anybody particularly interested in these emergency services or getting more informed and more involved. Basically, I went and put all of the direct links and meeting times for all the stuff in one printed out packet, or by scanning the QR code, it links to a Google Doc with all that stuff in it. So I just want to go over that a little bit. I'm going to grab a packet myself so I can look and see. But you can see for Port Norris, as an example, on page 3, I guess it is, the second physical piece of paper, it's double-sided. But the website link is portnorrisfire.com. It's right there. And the reason why I put that is, depending if you go on a county website or a township website, they'll link to different things, or some of the links are broken, or they haven't been updated in a while. So that's the actual portnorrisfire.com website. And then if you look up on Facebook, it's Port Norris Fire Company. And some of the districts actually do a very good job posting on Facebook, as opposed to having a lot of the updates on the actual, official website, I guess you would call it. I saw Dividing Creek has like a post almost every day about a call that they respond to. Laurel Lake posts their bingo night every week and other important information. So sometimes people like to complain about social media, but if you use it correctly, there's actually a lot of good information on there. Then if you were to attend one of the fire district meetings, sometimes, again, the websites are not updated. Meeting times have changed over the past several months or a year or something. So I made sure that, as best as I could, I posted the correct meeting time and location and day of the month. And then the direct link to the meeting minutes. The idea would be to read the meeting minutes so you would familiarize yourself with what the current issues and topics are. And then when you attend, you can ask clarification questions, or also if you're part of the public, if you want to get more involved, you say, how can I help? Whether you want to volunteer, or I saw a very long post, I think it was on Dividing Creek's social media page, where somebody suggested, like, sometimes they just need you to knock on doors to help get recruits, or help sell tickets for the sub sale, and blah, 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 blah. So if you live in one of these communities and you have a couple of extra hours to volunteer, there are a lot of ways to help out. And then there's the upcoming events, such as in Port Norris, they have an oyster and ham dinner. Apparently that's a very famous event. I had no idea up until a couple weeks ago. But apparently a lot of people show up to that, and it's excellent. Cumberland County's known for the oysters and all that kind of stuff. And other districts have similar events. I believe Heislerville has a family-style dinner coming up. So if you want to get more involved, network, help the community a little bit, you can show up to the upcoming events. So that's the call to action packet, and there's going to be a lot of information here for people watching at home. If I would say, so that you don't feel like you're just getting talked at for an hour or so, just keep in mind there are next steps to take so that you can stay involved, informed, and all that kind of stuff. So one issue especially relevant to me is just the fire district awareness gap. I don't live in one. I had no idea that they existed. I saw a John Oliver segment from about 10 years ago where he did about 15 minutes straight on special districts and their elections, and how very often they operate, I don't know, you would say behind the scenes, or just people aren't aware. And a lot of times the meetings will have nobody from the public there. I was told at my first fire district meeting I was the second person to show up in 12 years. So I'm not making it up. It's a fairly well-known issue. So hopefully raising awareness will get some more people to get involved and show up in the meetings and be aware of the issues, especially the recruitment one. I mean, there's no bigger problem, I would say, than having enough emergency personnel on hand for when emergencies occur. So another issue with that, I don't know if I explicitly wrote it down. Yeah, there it is. They occur in February, right? So we just had the big gubernatorial race. People are a little burnt out on politics from that. If you live in Cumberland County, we just had a Cumberland Regional High School bond referendum thing, so maybe you were paying attention to that. Then you have like your reorganization meetings. It's very easy for people to just tune out, especially when it happens off season, I guess you could say. And then apparently this is a nationwide issue, but especially here in Cumberland County, local press coverage has dwindled a whole lot. If you drive by the Daily Journal building, it's literally abandoned. So that's where I try to come in a little bit, not because I intended to become a political journalist or election coverage guy, but just because I opened a Ballot one day and I was like, where do I find information about these people? And it was quite a challenge. And then as I explained in the onboarding packet, sometimes the information online that's posted is not up to date. So even if you are trying to be proactive like I am, you can run into many roadblocks by showing up to meetings that appear not to be happening, but it's just I got the wrong day and time. So people aren't aware, and turnout, as per the state comptroller report, is consistently under 2% for the district elections. So hopefully some of this effort will raise awareness and provide some actual results.
If I may,
Yeah.
a couple comments on this. I believe, I'm not 100% sure about this, but I believe Downe Township coalesced their 2 fire districts into one.
I think they're thinking about it.
Okay, I've heard it talked about. I'm not 100%. Also,
Yeah.
Leesburg Fire District number 1. So there was a big thing before my time, where Downe Fire got closed down by the state, and they split the area that the fire district covered between, I believe, Fire District 1 in Morris River Township, and then someone in Cape May County, a fire district in Cape May County. I do not know the specifics. However, I have been told specifically that their election alone falls differently than the rest.
Oh.
Because they cross a county line. They do their elections, I believe, in November instead of February.
Interesting.
That's what I've been told. I haven't looked into it. I don't have documentation to back that up. But
Well, that'll be a question for me to ask at the next meeting I go to. Thank you. So, beyond somebody like me who's an average voter just trying to learn, a lot of times people who don't live in fire districts might not be aware of them, but I've been talking to people like firefighters, EMS people running for office, people involved in local government, people involved in state level government. I called into a radio show a couple weeks ago and no clue, right? So just awareness beyond like average voter, whether you're in a fire district or not, it's a problem vast. So I hopefully some of this information will go to the appropriate or more appropriate people, people you would think would know that they exist and at least communicate and familiarize themselves enough so that when it's time for them to handle things, they at least somewhat know how to coordinate. So then getting into a little bit of what we already touched on, but to highlight why it matters to everyone. Basically, if you live in the fire district, obviously this is the governance body that handles the emergency services. And then across the country and New Jersey, volunteer recruitment is harder right now. I think we were talking before we started, but traditionally there were a lot of volunteer companies, and that worked fine when the community was a little bit smaller and tight-knit. But as the emergency services grew, it needed to be more streamlined, more, I don't know, I guess officially handled. And as those requirements grew, volunteering starts to make a little bit less sense, especially today when the cost of living is so high and everybody has a busy schedule. It's basically a full-time job. I mean, Casey, you would agree with that?
Oh, yeah.
Right. So we're asking people to have a full-time job or a second full-time job and not paying them like it's a full-time job. Even training requirements for Fire 1 starts at 240 hours spread out over 6 months in ideal conditions. I just did an interview with Emily Del Rossi of Millville, and she said when she was training during COVID, they shut everything down, which put a 3-month gap. So that turned into 9 months or a year instead of the 6 months. So it was even higher than normal.
And one thing just to add to that training requirement, that all is in person, right? So
Right.
240 hours of training doesn't include the travel time you have to put in to go back and forth.
And the study.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so that's what, 3 classes a week, right?
Yep. Typically, when I went through, I worked a full-time job during the day. I went after work. It was Tuesdays, Thursdays, and Saturdays. Every other Saturday. So it's technically every 2 weeks. It was 5
Sure.
days. My opinion on that is they really need to allow hybrid classes. That would make it much easier on individuals who are active outside of the fire service to be able to get the training. And it's something we already do in the medical side. And it's something that education is going to pretty much across the board.
Yeah.
And frankly, New Jersey is a lot different than other states in that we require these hours. Like, it's all about the hours, and even the instructors aren't necessarily behind it. I mean, if it takes 15 minutes to explain something in New Jersey, it requires you to be 3 hours. You kind of gotta fluff it, and it's not necessarily improving the education. When I went through fire school, one of my instructors did their fire schooling in both Delaware and New Jersey, and he said in Delaware it was 2 weekends, full days, both weekends, and he said he didn't learn anything more in New Jersey than he did in Delaware.
Right.
So, and that's a big thing that holds people up. I mean, I'm not a fire instructor right now because I can't fit it in my schedule to do the 100 hours of training that are required to be able to be a fire instructor.
Right. So you want to, but you physically can't.
I just don't have the time. I have other responsibilities.
Right. And then to piggyback off of that a little bit too, when I was doing my interview with Emily, that the 240 hours is the literal classroom time. Then you have to go home with your friends, like she called it a brotherhood, everybody works together. But then you have to go home and you have to study, you have to memorize, you have to practice. Just like when I was in music school, it's like, you can't just tell me what a song is, I have to go home and memorize it. Training doesn't stop in the classroom. So 240 hours could easily be closer to 500, just as a ballpark. And then, so there are mandates that happen from the state. One thing I heard, I think it was the Port Norris fire district meeting. Sometimes they'll say the tires on the truck need to be replaced every 8 years, even though they have a perfectly fine tread on it, which causes a financial problem. Are we actually looking at what needs to be done, or are we just following a rule on a paper? Now, ideally, you would do this kind of preventative maintenance, but when money's tight, you would hope that there would be some flexibility, and that's just one example of several I've heard. Then additional training requirements sometimes happen. Apparently there was an accident one time, sometime recently, somewhere in the county, and now I don't know if it's all the fire districts, but my understanding is the neighboring ones now have to go through, I don't know, an additional 15-hour class or something for an isolated incident. So it's kind of highlighting a stretched department with stretched personnel being asked to do additional things when that might encourage people to step back a little bit. And then maybe you can speak to this. Some fire districts are a little bit more financially sound than others, and so they wind up helping pay for other ones' bills. Is that correct?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I mean, I can speak for commercial township because I know commercial township well. Port Norris, Mauricetown, were kind of like almost ghost towns, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like if you consider what industries, where's the area up, they're kind of gone now. Laurel Lake, on the other hand, is more of a suburban area. We have pretty much half the population. So, and our people are able more so than not to pay their taxes, though we really have had an issue with that this year. But pertinently, what I'm getting at is, so fire districts, as the name implies, are for fire services. However, the statutes do allow us to support EMS services as well. And there's all kinds of argument about hospital-based versus fire-based EMS services. Frankly, in my experience, they're all the same EMTs that do both sides of things, and it doesn't matter if you're doing it through a hospital or you're doing it through a fire district. People who care do a good job, and people that are just doing it as a job don't. But anyway, not the point here. Point here is that the fire districts in Commercial Township, we are the ones that actually do finance the EMS services. I will give our municipality credit in that they did allocate $60,000 in emergency appropriations at the end of last year because we got put in a tight spot because of a loss of business, part of the business. That being said, we didn't utilize it, but they did make those emergency appropriations just to make sure we recovered and wouldn't have to shut down. But if you go based off the percentages of calls that are offered in the 3 different fire districts, the fire district 1 and 2, Port Norris and Mauricetown, are not paying. And Mauricetown's actually probably a lot closer than Port Norris, but that's just because they're so small in their population, the amount of calls they have. But proportionally, the amount of money that it actually takes to run that side of the company that's financed through the fire district, it's not there. And they know it, and we know it, and they always argued before about, well, we want to know exactly what it costs so we can make sure that we're paying enough. Even though we know we're not paying enough now, we're not willing to pay more and less.
I see, yeah.
Which over the course of the last year and a half, I have compiled that information to be able to give them the exact figures and prove it. But I'm going to wait until 2027 to do that, just because they need a bit of a heads up, because you can't just raise your taxes by whatever you want. There are very specific statutes that govern how much taxes can be raised. And 3% rule, yeah, you're only allowed to raise it by 3%. So if we tell them that, hey, you're going to have to pay us 3 times the amount, which is kind of funky how it's set up anyway, which I'm not going to get into. It's not paid directly by the fire district to our fire district. It's paid by the fire company to the fire company. Just to be specific on that, the fire districts are the government entities that are responsible for getting the taxes. The fire companies are independent businesses that provide the services. I feel like I'm rambling on a little bit. Pertinently, the fire districts in Commercial Township provide EMS services as well as fire services. specifically Fire District 3 does. We do get some financing supporting that part of the business that indirectly comes from the other 2 fire districts, but it's not proportional to the amount of the service that they receive.
I gotcha. Was that clear? Okay, cool.
Very concise, but clear.
No, I mean, I like people who over-explain, because if you under-explain, then I miss key details. So we already went over the mutual aid thing. I mean, to highlight it a little bit more, you guys might not be aware, but Downe Township is the only one in Cumberland County that has a dive team. And they actually go all over. They go throughout the county. I think they even go to like Philadelphia to save people, if I'm remembering correctly from my research yesterday. And as we said before, you know, like Dennisville will come over into Cumberland County, and what would that be? Probably Dividing Creek would go into Cape May County and all that stuff. So when I was looking on Facebook, it happens all the time. When we say mutual aid, I think when I went to your meeting, you had said something like you responded to 8 calls in Millville. Mm-hmm. And that was already and that was a 1 month?
That was EMS specific. I want to make that clear, and that those were EMS mutual aid calls. But we do a substantial amount of mutual aid.
Right, so that's already twice a week on average.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Right, so
it was a lot worse back when Inspira did primary EMS services for Millville. We were going into Millville like 5 times a day.
Oh, wow.
Volunteer fire and rescue company. It was horrendous. And that was a big part of the reason why Millville, the municipality, stopped contracting with Inspira and took it back over themselves.
Cool. So that was my first signal about the mutual aid thing. Because a lot of people will say, well, I live in Millville. Why should I care about what the fire districts are doing? And then I was listening for it. And then when they said it at the meeting, I was like, okay, mutual aid. Now I'm going to pay attention. There's like a laundry list. I'm not making it up. It happens all the time. Then, I don't know if Casey's aware of this, but the radio programming issue. So apparently, Cumberland County used to have a dedicated radio programmer. Mm-hmm. The radios need to be programmed appropriately so that they can communicate with the other counties. Now that person got cut, and the plan is to get somebody from Camden County or contract Camden County to reprogram the radios, but that's going to take time to process. I think it's going to be at least several months before these radios get programmed.
Just a little background here. We've recently switched from analog radios to digital radios. I think we were utilizing ultra high frequency radios, and we switched to
700.
What's that?
700 megahertz?
Yeah, I think we're on 700 megahertz.
That's what I was reading.
Yeah. So they're both radios, right? Like you key up, you talk, you unkey. But in analog radios, you give the message and you don't know whether or not they're getting it or not, right? If you imagine like old staticky TVs versus like modern like computers, you know, you might have like a buffering period, but the signal you get is going to be good regardless. And so the same thing applies to that. Well, TVs are technically a type of radio technology in a lot of ways, but anyway, so we have digital radios now, not analog. There was a massive project. I don't know exactly how much it was, but it was in, I believe, the 8-figure range, over $10 million to upgrade the infrastructure to get us over. And while this was all happening, they fired whoever was in charge of the project. The county commissioners, to my understanding. I don't know specifics about that. I have enough to deal with them on fire district level. So one step at a time.
So, but the underlying point is there's limitations with how you can communicate with the other counties at the moment.
Yeah.
Okay. So, and as Casey just pointed out, if you're an average voter like me, you might not realize that it directly relates to county governance. He was just mentioning county commissioners making decisions about how they're doing things. So if you're wondering, why should I care about this? Well, if you're going to vote for a county commissioner, this is at least somewhat related. We already did the mutual aid, EMS. We already, and just to point out, the EMS issue was described by county commissioners as a countywide crisis. So, and this was all of last year, leading up to the county commissioner elections. So again, we're highlighting the connections. We did the ambulance. Well, I think we talked about the ambulance contracts before the meeting a little bit. So multiple townships are being charged, I believe, about $30,000 a month for ambulance services right now through Inspira, until they figure out whatever the new method is going forward. And I wish there was at least one county commissioner here to help explain that a little bit better, but as a surface level understanding, they're getting charged a whole lot of money to provide basic EMS services.
Can I?
Sure,
on that?
sure.
So what they're charging them right now really isn't much at all.
Oh,
When
really?
you actually consider the cost of what it is to provide those services. Mind you, one of the big problems we face is people don't have money and they don't have insurance. So you can bill them, but if you don't get anything, what do? You send them to collections and you put them in debt, you still don't get anything out of it. And we really don't want to do that to our residents, right? So I can't give you the exact figures. I've been told things, I haven't seen documentation, but I can tell you what I know because I've been around long enough to experience it. So Inspira Medical Center, which I'm not trying to give them any major problems. They are a nonprofit organization that provide medical care in Cumberland County. But they are a business, a nonprofit business, be it, that need to be concerned with how their cash flow is going. And primary EMS services in Cumberland County are a drain on resources because, again, people don't have money and insurance, and if you provide the services, which when you're out there, you're required. You can't turn to somebody and say, well, you can't pay for this, so I'm just going to leave you here to die. It doesn't work that way, right? Like a Hippocratic oath.
Sure.
We have something similar. So Inspira had given free primary EMS services to Morris River Township, to Downe Township, I believe skip one over in Fairfield Township.
Yeah, it might be that one.
And then
Or Deerfield, maybe.
no, Deerfield I believe is covered by Upper Deerfield, and then
Okay.
they have their own independent service there. Much like Commercial Township has Laurel Lake Volunteer Fire and Rescue Company that provide EMS services. Now, I was told, I don't know about this part, that those municipalities that got those $0 contracts had equipment that they then sold. There is still one pure volunteer EMS service that's in Cumberland County, at least one, and I can only speak to the one which is in Lawrence. I think I got that right. It might be confusing Fairfield and Lawrence, but I'm fairly certain that it's Lawrence. So they gave these $0 contracts. So now these municipalities don't have EMS services in their budgets at all. And then they turned around and said, hey, we're going to pool these services. This is eating into our bottom line, and they need to be able to sustain themselves, right? Like, we need hospitals, and primary EMS services are important. Sure, you call 911, you want an ambulance, but the hospital providing those services was draining into their budget, and that's a problem all in and of itself. I can't speak specifically to the finances of Inspira Medical Center. I just do not know. But what I can tell you for certain is that they pulled their primary EMS services that they were offering for free. Now, rumors floated around.
You mean, sorry, pool, like bring it together, right?
No, pulled like we're not
Taken
doing it
away.
anymore.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So that's what happened through Inspira, and they had I think what they really did was they pulled the resources towards doing transports, because transports, people who get them have insurance, and the insurance pays for those transports. A lot of it comes to proper documentation and, well, constant fights with insurance companies, right? Because insurance companies love to collect premiums that they hate to pay out,
Right.
which is part of that business, right? I'm not giving every insurance adjuster crap for what they do, it's what they do. And when it comes to emergency medical services, again, you call 911, you expect to have an ambulance, but that ambulance has to give you care regardless of whether or not you need it. I work duty crews. I work from 10 p.m. to 6 a.m. between doing my normal job and handling all of my other responsibilities. And I can tell you, most of the time you go out there and it's not a true medical emergency. And in those situations, I'm never going to refuse care to a patient. I'm never going to do it because I'm not going to take on that liability, not for myself, not for the company, because I'm not a doctor. I can't diagnose you. I can take your vitals. I can get pretty good impression. I can handle emergency medical issues, but I can't make a diagnosis. And if something were to happen and I refuse care to that patient, well, that makes a huge liability for not just me, but for the company. But back to the county, which countywide is not accurate, right? Because Vineland, Bridgeton,
Right.
Millville are all part of this county. They do not have these problems. Commercial Township ran into an issue only because we were contracting with Inspira to provide transports. And the people handling our finances were relying upon that. And there was a huge reorganization where all these people walked away and the people who were left were not prepared to take it over. But we still managed to do it. We went to the township and we said, hey, we might run out of money. And the fire district is very specific here, does not provide towards payroll, right? So all of the money that the fire districts in Commercial Township put into emergency medical services are purely towards providing the ambulances, the overhead expenses. They are not towards paying the actual employees.
Right.
That revenue is generated from billing for the EMS services.
Okay.
So we, as a fire district government, we make sure that these services can be provided, but it's on the company that we contract with to actually provide those services.
Yep.
And they pay those EMTs, because how are you going to expect, 2 people 24/7 and not compensate them at all?
Right.
Maybe one 30 years ago, when one person could work a 40-hour week and support a family of 4, that was fine. But that's not the typical situation in today's world.
Correct. Yeah.
Pay has not gone up with the cost of living. And let's not talk about real estate prices. That's hyperinflated.
Yeah. I think we're all hyper aware of that. So then another point to highlight, I went to a Cumberland Station 23 meeting where they told me their ballot question is to pay for a new fire truck and a utility truck. And through that process, they're applying for a grant, I believe from the state. And so they got Senator Testa, Assemblyman Simonson and McClellan, Van Drew to write up a support letter. And I think they're still waiting on Senator Booker to sign on to that too. So it's another highlight of you might not live in a fire district, but the people you vote for at the state and congressional and federal levels are managing it or contributing, spending their time and resources helping with these kinds of things. So again, the next time you vote for a U.S. Senator, you can ask, what do you know about the fire districts and how's that going? Just as a general informational pillar, I guess you could say. We did the EMS stuff a lot. One thing, this is a little speculative, but economic development versus emergency capacity. So in Cumberland County, one of the big things that gets talked about is they want to get more ratables, draw in businesses, and build up like the county parks and all that stuff so that the community or the county looks more marketable to bring in businesses or attract tourism and all that kind of stuff. And so in my mind, again, opinion, speculation, how attractive can you be to bring people in if your emergency services are struggling? So hopefully we can correct this problem moving forward so that nobody, hopefully not too many people that we're trying to attract become aware of that. So, this is just more mutual aid kind of stuff. Blah, 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 blah. We already hit that. The bigger picture. And here's another kind of thing. Fire districts are governing bodies and they have elections. So just as like either a meta point or a foundational point, when we have elections, we're hopefully treating them seriously, right? So if people aren't aware and they're not turning out to vote and they're not casting informed votes, then the point kind of becomes, if we don't pay attention to an election related to such a foundational concept, what else are we not paying attention to? Especially in today's day and age where people are distracted by 100 million different things. They have full-time jobs, blah, 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 blah. I understand not everybody has all day, every day to pay attention to special districts and their elections, but the easier we can make it for people to pay attention, consolidate the information, present it to them so that they can be more informed and civically engaged, I think it could help the foundation of the community, I guess, if that makes sense. I got a little rambly. So now that we've explained what's going on and why it's important, all that kind of stuff, let's take a closer look at where the districts are and what's actually going on with them in terms of their current issues and the elections. So that's a map for those of you who are not super familiar with Cumberland County. We're here in Millville, and down to the left is Downe Township, which is where 2 fire districts exist. I think there's like one here and one there. It'll be on the next slide. To the east of it is Commercial Township, and to the east of that is Morris River Township. And then, boop, over there, you can see up here is Cumberland Station 23, and over here is Atlantic County. So obviously, they're going to help with Atlantic County with the mutual aid over there. They're going to hit Vineland and Millville. Down here is Laurel Lake, where Casey is from. As we already said, they're constantly going into Millville. Port Elizabeth would go into Atlantic County. And then here is where you can see they're going to help each other with mutual aid around there. Mauricetown is a little bit further south. They're going to hit Atlantic County, maybe Cape May County a little bit. Down over here is downtown. There's Downe Township down there. So this is Dividing Creek. If I remember correctly, Dividing Creek will go up into Lawrence Township. And then Downe will also go into Lawrence Township. Port Norris is down here. They are probably mostly staying within the county. Oh, and don't forget, Downe Township goes everywhere with their dive team, like Philadelphia, Gloucester County, all that kind of stuff. And then down here, you've got Leesburg and Heislerville, which will go into Cape May County all the time. So they are scattered throughout this southern and eastern part of the county. So fire district number 1, Port Norris. What's on their actual ballot? They have 2 seats up for election. Guys named Robert Goodhart and Guy DeFabrides. No ballot questions confirmed at this time. At their meeting, again, they're actively seeking volunteers. Yeah, sure.
My question, Steve, is this similar to Board of Education where the candidates are nonpartisan or expected to be nonpartisan?
I believe so.
Okay.
And I would hope so. Because nobody cares if you're a Republican or Democrat when they're calling 911, right?
We've also seen the Board of Education elections have started to get
Partisan.
quasi more partisan. I mean, they're not necessarily running under the banner
Yeah.
of a party, but like a group name, like Moms for Liberty.
Right,
You know,
right,
things like that, which then well, they lean this way.
right.
You know, and I was just
And
curious
it
if
does
doing
bring
this.
up an interesting point because ideally you would hope it's nonpartisan, but at the same time, it's reality. And so if you do lean left or you do lean right or libertarian or whatever, you do want to know that information, right? So, and I encountered that in the Millville election. It's like, yeah, it's supposed to be nonpartisan, but you talk to somebody for 5 minutes, you know exactly who they are, or I mean, at least which way they lean. So, but one thing I'll point out, I think I did a count last night. Maybe there's 15 candidates. I don't think any have responded to outreach like directly with like answers to basic questions like, you know, what's your background and what's your awareness of the issues and all that kind of stuff. So I think I met one of these two guys at the meeting, but you know, no response. And the ballot question, most of them have at least a budget ballot question, which brings up another interesting point. Maybe Casey can push back against me if I sound stupid when I say this, but if most of them are doing a budget question, as in, do you as a voter approve of this budget or not, that there would be some sort of explanation of why you would be asked that, as in, this is why we made these purchases over the year.
So they asked the ballot question that, you know, be honest with you, I'm not exactly sure what the administrative code says, but I believe that it is in the NJAC that we're required to put it on the ballot, is can we raise this much money in taxation towards our purpose?
Mm-hmm.
Right, so it's not that they're voting on the budget specifically, they're voting on the total amount that we are raising, right? So the budget is the specific allocation of the funds,
Sure.
not just the total amount to be raised by taxes.
Yeah. I guess the underlying point I'm getting to is, well, if you're asking me yes or no, what is this is reminding me of the Cumberland Regional High School bond referendum question. They put on this whole big presentation, and some of it seemed fair and balanced. But then when I took a closer look, I was like, yeah, but this, and this. They didn't. It was like kind of hesitant to actually explain and all that kind of stuff. So when I see a budget question on an election, who's giving the fair and balanced presentation?
So that comes before the actual election. So the Department of Community Affairs handles this, mainly handles this, and the way that we're required to handle our budget, right? So we make a budget and we have to submit that to introduce it to the Department of Community Affairs, and then they give us feedback that we have to respond to. And then before the election, and this is part of the election timeline, we're required to advertise for and have a open forum on the budget for people to come out and ask those questions.
Mm-hmm.
So that's done independently of so there's not an I'm gonna pronounce the word wrong. We don't explain the whole budget on the ballot,
Mm-hmm.
but we do have to have an open forum to discuss things on the ballot before.
What's the turnout on the open forums?
I did not have a single person ask a question on it when we had it. We introduced it. I had to make like one extra note on the DCA came back and they were like, add this like one note just so it's there. And then we had the open forum during one of our regularly scheduled meetings. Nobody came out for it, and then we sent it back to the DCA. Like, yep.
So this is basic public engagement type issue that I'm circling.
Lack thereof, really.
Right. As in, my basic point stands, but you're saying it happens earlier in the process, and it would imply that people would have to actually show up and be engaged and all that kind of stuff. So again, turnout or basic public engagement is ideally wanted. So they're looking for volunteers. They have lawn signs up. And this was one of the districts where they didn't have the correct meeting time on their website. But once I figured it out and I showed up, they were very cooperative, nice people, happy to answer all my questions and all that. But I guess that underlying point is not everybody's as persistent as me. So if they're even looking at this stuff in the first place, if they were to show up and there's nothing apparently going on, as in there's not even a meeting going on, that's part of what could prevent public engagement. They were operating with 3 commissioners instead of 5, but that seems to be corrected. They have found people to fill those seats, and I'm assuming they're going to go unchallenged and they're just going to fill the seats. But as Casey pointed out in our interview, that is an ongoing problem, getting people to even run for the seats. Do you want to elaborate on that at all, or is that just straightforward?
It's a crappy job.
Thankless job, right?
No.
Oh, and that brings up a point that you're one of the few districts where you actually get paid to do it, right?
Yeah. Well, a lot of them have like the treasurer and the secretary be paid. Ours, everybody does. I honestly think we get paid too much, to be frank with you. I've made this argument before, but I was really hoping that, so a fire district, we do a resolution, this is how much we should be paid, and then we have to send it to the municipality, and the municipality votes on it, that approves it. And I was really hoping the municipality was going to push back on it, so I didn't have to be the guy that was like, hey, guys that I'm working with, you don't deserve to be paid as much as you're being paid. But unfortunately, they just approved it.
Mm-hmm. So, something to discuss moving forward, I guess. I mean, I always make the argument that if we want representatives to do their job well, you should pay them well, but paying them too much would also be a problem. So, a discussion.
You make a fair point there.
Yeah.
And you shouldn't, well, and again, the whole service is set up as a volunteer service. That's why I have a fire district.
Yeah.
So.
I mean, the recurring point is people love to show up at the school board meeting and yell at them, and I'm like, but they don't even get paid to be there. So it's like, anyway. Oops, sorry. We already talked about that. We talked about that. We talked about that. So I was assuming there would be more people here, candidates or district representatives who might wanted to correct all the dumb things I'm saying or more public questions, but it's us. So again, feel free to chime in whenever you feel like. So Mauricetown, the Fire District 2, again, 2 seats up. Clifford Sharp and Ron Sutton are running. I personally handed over questionnaires and stuff. I have not received a response yet.
Steve,
yeah.
how often, or what is the term for these candidates? Is it a 2-year term, 3-year term, 4-year term?
I don't know exactly.
3-year.
It's
3-year.
3, yeah.
And the other thing, since it's, if I'm reading this correctly, 2 seats up, there's 2 people running, so they're basically on the post, correct?
Correct.
So, I mean, that's also probably part of the reason why I don't answer any of the questionnaires, because
They don't have to, yeah. But it's unfortunate, I think, because, I mean, I get it from like a basic time and amount of necessity standpoint, but just basic information. Make sure that it's not just straight installing people, or you just want to know who these people are that help run your community, right? Like when I opened my Ballot a couple years ago, it most of the seats were unopposed, but I just wanted to know, like, who are the people running my community? And then I'll elaborate on that a little bit more. Now we do have races that were unopposed before, but now they have competition, and without getting too opinionated about it, sometimes it's really odd results happen, where people who don't campaign are getting 40% of the vote, where people who don't say anything substantive wind up winning. It's like, well, who are you? Like, what do you believe? What's going on here? So I would hope this would be at least some sort of preventative measure, that there is at least some basic information, and then when there is competition later, there's a system in place to help respect the process, I guess. Did you have a question, Terry?
Well, I think it speaks to the broader issue of where people just get complacent and they get worn down with a number of other things, personally or politically or professionally, that it's like, what, this is the last thing that's on my list that I'm worried about right now.
Sure.
And then it's just like, what, it doesn't appear broken to me without really understanding what's going on, so I can let this slide. And then it's one of those things that's going to turn up where all of a sudden something tragic is going to happen, and somebody's going to say, well, why did this happen? Well, it's because for years and years and years and years this has been neglected because nobody cared or showed up. And then it's like, oh.
Yeah, I first heard the phrase when I was traveling in Vietnam. Nothing's a problem until it's a big problem.
Yeah, exactly.
And that being said, I forget which one of these, but one of these two candidates stepped down, and somebody, I believe, named Seth Beaumont is running now. And the only question is a budget question. There seemed to be some kind of issue regarding how they were going to pay for rent versus LoSAP and stipend. I was hoping maybe at least one person from the district could have clarified that a little bit so it doesn't come across as inaccurate or vague, but that's what I noticed at one of the meetings. And this is where I learned of the additional driver training, where basically anybody who actually wants to drive the trucks now has to go through some type of multi-hour additional training because there was an accident in the county by one of the fire trucks. So Laurel Lake, that's where Casey's from. We have two candidates, Janet Campbell and Larry Kaufman. They're both incumbents, so I assume they're running unopposed. The ballot questions are budget approval and the LoSAP modification.
We have a third one too.
Oh, you have a third one?
Yeah. So fire districts, and this kind of goes across the board for different government entities, have what's referred to as capital outlay, which is essentially us just saving money for things that are expensive, that are capital improvements. So we have to have, anytime we utilize the money that we have put into capital outlay, we have to get voter approval in order to utilize it. And so we want to use some of the money out of our capital outlay to purchase self-contained breathing apparatus equipment. And so there's a third question to ask if we can use that.
Okay, so I'll make sure to update that.
And LoSAP, in case you aren't familiar with, is a fringe benefit that's offered through tax money for volunteers. It's a length of service awards program is what it stands for, but essentially setting up an investment retirement account for volunteers. You can't compensate them directly, but you can do that. The state also allows educational incentive as well, which at some point I'll probably set that up one thing at a time.
And then is this where it's going from percentages to actual volume? Is that?
I will be careful what I say here. A large part of it is changing what's called the schedule of points, which is how you go about. So You don't just sign up for LoSAP and that person, because they're signed up for LoSAP, is going to get the contributions. They get the contributions based off what's called a schedule of points. So hey, if you show up half the time, you get half the contributions. If you show up all of the time, you get all. Now, it's kind of ridiculous to expect anybody to make everything. So that's not exactly how it works. But you have a point system, and based on that point system, people can get contributions into their independent investment account. We utilize Contractor Lincoln Financial to handle our LoSAP. It's not done directly by us. And it actually comes from the fire company, not the fire district, the points and what those contributions should be. But anywho, the big part of what we're doing on our LoSAP is to...
Is that correct? It's the number of calls?
Not exactly. No,
Oh.
That's more so how it was. So... So along with our ballot, we have to have an exploratory statement, which I've been getting pushback from the county because they haven't done it before. Nobody's done it right, but...
Oh, you have the wording?
Yeah, I can bring it up. I have everything through OneDrive, so...
Oh, right.
Cloud computing, you know what I mean?
Quick answers.
Brave new world. Oh boy. So I wrote an entire schedule of points down, which gives points. So it's up to there's 120 possible points that you can get. You need 100 points in order to get maximum contributions. So like every time you attend a drill or a meeting,
then you get a point.
Get 1 point, up to a maximum number of points for attending those, right?
Right.
So we might have 24 meetings during a year, but you can only get a maximum of 10 for attending meetings.
Right.
There's points for attending drills.
Okay.
There's points for attending fundraisers.
So I'll update that too.
It's on the website.
Oh, good. Good. That's convenient. So there were other issues going on. I don't know how deeply we need to get into it, but there was like the TD Bank representative issue.
Yeah, so this is generally something that occurs when you have people that step away without setting up their predecessors. Hold on, I'm using the word successors.
Yeah.
Right? Is you have an account. You have people that are active on that account. But it's the people on that account, not the fire district. So then it's a huge argument with those independent contractors as to, hey, these people aren't here anymore. What am I supposed to do?
But it's like a small issue that'll get...
Small issues in general, yes, right? As long as they're getting paid, things don't go haywire.
Right.
But when you're requesting documentation, they give you pushback.
But what I'm saying, though, is a lot of these seem small. We don't really... the other thing that kind of highlights people getting stretched thin was like the website maintenance thing, where you were saying you were staying there till 2 a.m. trying to rework the website, like learning how to code and all that kind of stuff.
I had to make a whole new website because we're required to have a website as fire district. It's required by statute.
Is that already a requirement?
Oh yeah, that's been a requirement for a decade.
Yeah, so there's one district that might
That
really...
purges themselves every year when they submit their budget and they have to sign off that they have it. Yeah. But anywho, the website, website host that we had utilized, told us in November that they were closing it forever so they told us like mid-November that by December 1st it was gone.
Mm-hmm.
Something like that. So I had like 2 weeks, along with all my other responsibilities, to make a whole new website to make sure that we still had a website that was up and running.
And, luckily, I don't know exactly where you are with Justin or whatever, but there are people who can help with that kind of stuff, and so that somebody who's already working 2 jobs and stretched way thin, people from the community can really step in and just help take care of it. Like when I redid the InformTheVoteNJ site, I mean, it took, once I figured out what I needed, what I wanted for it, took me like a half an hour to redo the whole website. You know what I mean? Like, so not to say that's a jab at you or anything, but like people with more experience can help streamline a lot of this kind of stuff. And then I guess these two issues kind of relate to the overall experience of what it's like to be a firefighter, an EMS type person. When I did my interview with Emily, she was talking about you're not just responding to call like random fire calls or whatever. Sometimes you're getting calls for people that you know, and you're somebody you know just died, and you have to like deal with that, keep your composure, or some of these random things you never think about, like you rescue somebody and you put them in the rescue room and then bed bugs happen and all that kind of stuff. And so it's not a pretty job. And so hopefully paying a little bit more attention and helping people with these kinds of things, it's a basic sign of respect for the community. So Fire District number 1 in Downe Township, they have 2 candidates. The mayor, Mike Rothman, confirmed there's no ballot questions. He said in our phone interview that they operate on the lowest budget in Cumberland County. The previous fire chief stepped down and the new chief came in and he's doing a really good job. And they spent a lot of time with cost controls and continuity of leadership during transition phases. So then, this is another, website type thing. He wasn't aware that his website had crashed, and so they didn't have meeting minutes from last year. And again, the meeting times and locations weren't posted properly. I was able, I think, to infer through like 2024 meeting minutes when it was happening, but obviously that's like a stretch. You want to know that it's clearly posted somewhere as opposed to having to dig for it.
They actually just changed law.
Yeah, he sent me a picture about that.
You don't have to publish in a newspaper for meetings anymore. You just publish on the website.
Yeah, and that brings up another good point. Not just with like fire districts or whatever, but for municipalities, Terry's very familiar with this, the data center stuff, right? There was a big issue with, we posted something about this in the planning board meeting like a year or so ago, blah, 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 as if the legal requirement was enough so that the community was actually informed about what was going on.
Right, because they were talking about how they had posted it in like this periodical, they had made this notification, they had done this, but has stood up and said nobody reads that.
Right.
Like, was it purposely done? Like, how can you expect, if you're only going to post it in these limited places, how are you going to expect people to get it if you're not telling us this is where we need to go?
So yeah, it can come across as if it was purposely done that way. I wonder though if whoever's in charge of posting the stuff just follows the legal requirement. And they're not thinking like, oh, well, I really hope everybody hears about the data center, right? And it would be this, I would imagine the same thing with fire district meetings and locations, and when the elections happen, they're just following a checklist. This is what I have to do. But hopefully through conversations like this, we can raise the bar and say, well, that's not really acceptable in 2026.
But not only that, the rules they may be following may be antiquated rules that haven't haven't evolved with the change.
Correct.
And how society has changed.
Right. Everybody wants to see it just on their Instagram feed or something, like ideally.
Right, that, or a text message notification or something, and granted, that's something people have to opt in for with their communities, but there needs to be a way to allow people to know that moving forward, this is like we used to put our things in the press, in the classified section under this. Now what we're doing is this will be on our website and you can log in for text notifications when, meetings are scheduled or minutes are posted or, the next set of resolutions are going up so you know what's going on.
And I wonder if there would be some sort of like extra well-known sort of onboarding meeting that happens every year, as in, think about the 18-year-olds who've never paid attention to any of this before, and they're thinking like, well, what am I responsible for? So maybe the municipalities, districts, whatever, have this onboarding meeting every year. It's like, okay, we're telling you now, this is how we do things. So we don't want to hear any complaints later that you were uninformed. This is the formal official meeting to let everybody know what's going on and how we handle everything. Rothman explained that he's gonna fix the website, soon. So despite the website problems, as I was digging deeper, I found their Facebook page, and they do an excellent job of posting things like almost every day. They're responding to a call. They let people know when they have events coming up. They post that, and that might be another thing to put in those kinds of meetings. Is we have official Facebook pages for our fire districts or city hall or whatever it is. Follow it. That way you guys can stay up to date and nobody's getting caught off guard about, do fire districts even exist, or is the data center about to change the landscape of your town? Dividing Creek is Fire District 2. They have 3 people running. I don't know about a ballot question. Rothman said that in that fire district, 3 commissioners have stepped down this past year, and they have 3 new people coming on, and he characterized it as the new people coming on are inheriting a headache. I don't know exactly what he meant by that, but that's what he said. So they're going through a transition, and it's going to be a learning curve for the new people, I imagine. I have not heard back from the point of contact that Rothman gave for me for that district. And so, I don't want to run this too long, but the basic point is I've done a lot of outreach for this, and I have not heard any response or from candidates directly. There have been a couple people like Terry Wilden in Heislerville. She talked to me in person. I generally know who she is, but I haven't received like official answers to questions. It's one thing to have an indirect conversation at a meeting, but I get hesitant for what I want to directly post on a website as like official press. You know what I mean? I don't want to mislead people because I kind of sort of heard something at a meeting. I want to know like, this is your response, and then I can just professionally put it on the website. Yeah, and this is the district that does not appear to have a dedicated website or posted meeting dates, times, locations, which is obviously concerning as well. Okay, we talked about the legal notice versus meaningful notice, the newspapers and all that kind of stuff. So Fire District 1, Leesburg, Corey Schaefer and Rob Creamer are running. I forget if Leesburg, I think one of them's an incumbent. And this is one where they may have recently changed their meeting times, because I was able to attend the meeting in November, but then December and January seem to not have occurred at the same time. Maybe I missed the memo that they changed times or something. And I may have figured it out by reading through minutes, but again, this is where properly maintained websites are important. We talked about that basically. Fire District 2, Heislerville is Terry Wilden, the woman I just mentioned. She's running. Oh, and so Morris River Township apparently has their township clerk on vacation. And so meeting minutes have and updates about meeting times and locations have not been updated for a month or two now. Talk about that. Port Elizabeth is another one where the website was not updated properly, so I wound up showing up to a meeting that appeared not to exist. Yeah. Cumberland Station number 23, that one was posted correctly, and when I showed up, everybody was very cooperative. William Pettit is up for re-election. William Hall is a write-in candidate. This is the one with the ballot question of the fire truck and the utility truck, where Testa, Simonson, McClellan, Van Drew, and maybe Booker wrote their sponsorship letter for the grant. Kind of rushing through because you guys basically get the point by now. I'm just making sure I hit everything. And so just to kind of recap, some of the broad challenges for all of this stuff is the gaps in publicly available information. It makes it difficult for somebody like me or anybody from the public who wants to get involved and help out and provide basic coverage. If I don't know when the meetings are, I can't attend them. If candidates don't respond, I can't provide information. And so it would seem as though the basic process is slipping. Another problem, incomplete election records over at the county clerk's office. They only had, I think, Cumberland Station number 23's results posted, which is, you know, odd. I don't know that everybody's looking at the results of fire district elections, but you would think basic processes would be followed through on. Oh, so another issue was Cumberland Regional High School. Their school bond referendum election cost over $100,000 to run. And if my math is correct and my memory is serving me correctly, there was only 100 people that voted, which means each vote costs about $1,000 to happen. And so then I wonder, well, how much does the fire district elections cost to run? You know, if you're having such low voter turnout and you're spending so much money to do it, can that be streamlined or handled a different way so that we're not just, you know, throwing away money? Oh, and then the time constraint. This one's a big one for me. By the time people actually hand in their signature petitions to the election is 1 month. So if I were being a lazy journalist, I would just wait until the list of candidates come out and then I would start contacting them. And then I would still not get the responses, blah, blah, blah. But ideally, I would be getting the responses, and then I would have maybe 2 weeks to put everything on the website, ask follow-up questions, attend meetings where I could, blah, blah, blah. And then the public would have maybe 2 weeks to look at it. Now, you guys have been running since, I don't know, at least November. No, you've been going April. I don't know when you started, but elections are kind of like a year-long process. Now, I don't think fire district needs to be that involved, but something a little bit more opened up so that I would at least have a month to show up to meetings, make my phone calls, collect all the information, put it on the website. But even right now, I mean, it's just almost not possible. So hopefully that can be opened up in the future. And then to address what the fire districts obviously need right now, they need recruits for firefighting and EMS and all that kind of stuff. Yeah, we already talked about all that. And then help, the ways the public can help, obviously, with recruitment, advertising, and outreach. Attend the fundraising and community events. One thing that Commissioner Taylor over in Millville and Emily Del Rossi, the girl I did the interview with, was talking about promotional events. Show up to the schools, put on presentations to make firefighting cool again. Or Casey and I came up with make firefighting sexy again. Whatever, however it is.
Maybe not put it that way in a school.
Maybe. Yeah, especially now with our national issues going on. But Emily was telling me about the flashover simulator. You know about that?
Yeah, we don't have it in Cumberland County.
But they have it in Atlantic County.
Yeah.
It's this thing where they simulate when a small room catches fire, and then you open the door, the oxygen gets introduced into the room, and now, obviously when that happens in real life, that's not very cool. But as a simulator or as an experience, a presentation for a kid, that would be something really fun and to get kids excited and hopefully then put them in a pipeline of here's the presentation, and then maybe invite them to the oyster and ham dinner, and then
Maybe virtually, like put them in a virtual flashover simulator.
Sure.
No, but you need to be like in full firefighting gear to be in a simulator.
But what I'm even playing the video of it.
Yeah, okay.
Anything to be like, we need people, we need to make this attractive, hopefully pay them more in the future, all that kind of stuff, so that the problem gets solved. And so that's self-explanatory. We already hit that. And any finishing thoughts, questions?
To me, it just seems like this is a problem that has been neglected for so long because it just hasn't affected anybody's lives. And then the minute that something, it's one of those instances where a tragedy is going to have to happen before somebody's like, oh,
Right.
oops, our bad.
Yep.
You know what actually amazes me is obviously in the past, well, we all know the terrorist attacks to the towers, 9/11. People from Cumberland County responded all the way to
Yep.
New York to those. We didn't see a massive uptick in volunteers after that happened. Which, I mean, talking about a major tragedy,
Yeah.
that's about as bad as it's ever been in the US. And there was a small uptick, but if you look at the graph of volunteers, 9/11 happened, it was only a little uptick, and it's continued to descend. It's shocking, right? Like I would have expected, looking at the data, to see a huge increase at that point in time, but it did. Yeah, it's like New Year's resolutions and gym memberships, you know? January 1st rolls around, everybody's there for about a week, and then it just drops right back off. So it's sustainable, you know. I don't know what'll make it sustainable. I don't know.
I mean, my fiscally conservative brain would say paid.
Yeah.
Pay people to do things we actually need them to do.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
It's kind
Thanks for coming. I know it wasn't super exciting, but hopefully it was informational. And just as a reminder, especially for you guys, you're, campaigning or whatever, showing up to the events, maybe just to meet people, network, get ideas, keep the ball moving forward. And for people at home, the election's the 21st.
I do have one question, just from a standpoint of maybe people at least vote more, I don't know if pay attention more, but at least be involved and vote more. If these elections were on the same ballot as November, like other elections that we find quote unquote more important. Like I'm not saying that this isn't important, because as Terry said, it's one of these things that you don't think about until you need it. But in the same respect, as you've mentioned, there is such a thing as just constant bombardment of this election, that,
Yeah.
which one to keep track of. So, I'm not necessarily saying that we're gonna have a better informed voter because we still have people running unopposed, but wouldn't it in some way make more sense to have this election, these ballots on the same as the bigger ballot election?
That has been suggested, and
Why aren't they already? Like, why is it a February election?
I
well,
mean,
I don't know.
it came up in the state comptroller audit,
Yeah.
and some districts actually have moved it over to November. Some districts fight against moving it, and one of the speculations is to keep it less aware. That way, they can push through whoever they want on their team. There was a better argument than that. I forget what it is at the moment. I'll have to get back to you on that. And there was legislation to make that possible. Back in 2016, a couple of state senators made that possible. And I think the county clerk told me that originally they set it up in February is because the districts don't perfectly align with the municipal elections. And so it would confuse the logistics on election day. Who's going into this booth to vote for this thing, who's going into that kind of thing. But I don't know if that's a strong argument to keep it that way.
I know the school board elections where I live are in November also, it's on the same ballot. We might not know who all the people are, but as Terry, you mentioned, they like to have a little snippet underneath of who they represent now, and you can get a sense of who they are or what they are based off of, it wasn't a Moms for Liberty, it was like something for, I forget how it was worded, but I'm gonna paraphrase it, it was, integrity in books or something like that. Like, I know what their agenda is.
Yeah.
So at least they would have these little groups that they're representing on the school board, and we had to pick 3 of the 6, and it's on the same ballot as everybody else's election. So at least you're getting participation, maybe not completely 100% informed participation, but participation nonetheless.
Yeah. Another.
Did I hear you correctly when you said there are different machines that they use for the five?
No, that would be like speculative logic.
Oh, okay.
As in, you have thousands of people walking in to do what should be a straightforward election, but because if you live in this fire district, you have to go over to this other spot to make sure your ballot matches exactly what you're voting
Right,
on.
but don't we already kind of sort of, well, it's something to look at, because don't we already kind of sort of do that with the different wards?
Right.
Because like I walk into and you're this and you're Ward 2 and you're, whatever,
Right.
so you have to go here, but my friend's going over there, and
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's being done in one instance. I don't see why it can't be done in another.
Yeah, because I go back to school because it's the word thing, because like the middle school and elementary school where I live, we are from Mantua, is Mantua school district, but the high school is Clearview Regional, which is then Mantua, Mulca Hill, Franklinville, so it's a, like a regional high school is, so like, I'll have people I'm voting for the middle school, elementary, even, I don't have children anymore there, but I still vote there for that, but then I also are voting on the ballot for, the Clearview kids.
Right. And it's making me think of one of my common suggestions, which is if we can put it in November and then transfer what I'm trying to do over to the county somehow, where this is just straightforward information sharing. You hand in your signature petition, they hand you back a questionnaire and opportunities to do basic neutral interviews and and they put it up on their website somewhere, and it's just taken care of.
Not even that. Like they can. I mean, we printed our ballots off of the internet.
Mm-hmm.
Like here it goes, it's ready, it's up, and then easily add another link to print up a here's a candidate questionnaire, and you submit it all at the same time.
Right.
There you go.
Yep.
Or not, even if you don't even do that, but what's your campaign website?
Mm-hmm.
And they just tie it onto there. So
Yep.
here's get to know your candidates. Here, go to their website.
Yep. Exactly. That was basically my original idea with this whole project.
Yeah, it's not.
It was basically just like a web development experiment. Like, here's a real world
Yeah.
problem. This is just a repository of links because you already have a website.
Yeah.
I just might not find it or might not think to look for it by just looking at my sample ballot. But if there's like an insert that the county government says, this is where we've compiled all the candidate information, just go to this website and you can find the links to everything,
Yeah.
And maybe if you have the election on not some random day in February when it's, ice and everything else outside, it's in November, you might have more than just 2 candidates for 2 spots.
Yeah.
Maybe.
I would really love to see people that aren't directly involved in the fire service run for the positions of fire commissioner.
What's
That
that
would
logic?
be optimal. Well,
Oh, it's the conflict of interest thing?
it's exactly it. Yeah.
That's a really good point because these two probably don't know already. There's people wearing like 4 different hats.
Oh yeah.
Well,
So-
we're seeing it at the national level.
Oh, yeah.
I think There's-
You have Mark Rubio, who isn't just Secretary of State, but he's also, I believe, overlooking the
Jester.
NSA, and this, it's, you get that. But then you have somebody like Joanne Famularo, who had to resign from the Pleasantville City Council because she was tasked with joining, I can't remember what it was, but she's gonna be doing something else with taxes, and she couldn't draw a pension out of the same thing,
Right.
out of the same kitty. So she had to decide which one she was going to do, but then you get, and granted, it might not be a pension thing, but they're wearing 4 hats.
Yep.
I mean,
But for the fire district, I don't want to put anybody on blast, but I'm pretty sure there's one guy who's a township commissioner, fire chief, and something else at the same time, which is exactly not supposed to be happening, right?
Kind of.
Yeah. So I don't know exactly. Again, I'm not an expert. People in the comments can correct me if they want. I don't care. But to be stretched that thin where you would even have to think about doing that is concerning.
Other people need to step up and take those positions. And I actively attempted to avoid responsibility for the vast majority of the time that I've been involved in the service. I like to work. I like to go out there and fight fires and save lives. I don't really want to have to do a bunch of paperwork and watch over people to make sure they're doing their jobs.
I'm exactly the same way.
Someone's got to do it, and they have to have integrity and they have to have competency. Because if you just have somebody who has a title but doesn't take care of the responsibilities of the role that they're in, it does nobody any good.
Right.
Especially if they're pulling a paycheck for it. That's just frustrating.
Yeah.
I do like the idea of moving the elections over though. And FYI, our elections, we have like a 100-year-old white box. People fill out their ballots on paper and drop them into the box.
Old school.
Oh yeah.
Anyway.
Looks
well,
like
and then the thing is too, is if you put them on the November, you have, and it goes out to everybody, because I know that we get the sample ballots that go out to everybody. You can see what it is,
Time to look up the people.
You have time to look up the people. Ideally, would it be nice on the sample ballots, there was like a
link.
Informational website listed.
That's exactly what I was saying.
Yeah, and granted that they'd have to type it in themselves.
QR code?
QR code.
QR codes, yeah, but you could also, it gets more people involved because they're like, what is this now that I'm voting for? What is the fire district that's there? So there's a potential bigger base from which to get the votes.
I every year when I get my sample ballot and I look at all the, I'm not I don't get primaries. I only vote in the actual election. Every year I get it, and I take a look at all the names on there and recognize maybe 2 of them. And then I have to say, well, am I going to vote for something without taking the time to look into it? Am I just going to listen to what somebody else says? I'm definitely not just going to vote down the list red or blue, because that's just not the kind of person I am. I'm going to make an informed decision, to vote for the best person I can. There have been times when I haven't voted just because I just could not figure out who the best candidate was. And half times, like, what are the problems that these people are actually addressing, right? Like, what are the big issues that are going on at the state levels, the county levels? And I mean, I know my municipality, I know my fire district intimately, but when it comes to the county, when it comes to the state, I mean, it's just all politics are local, right? Right? So when you are involved with those situations, you know what's going on. And to be able to make an informed decision on whether or not you agree with a person, you kind of need to know what's going on from their perspective, or in their local, if you will. I got a bunch of calls the night before the last election, and I fell asleep. And my girlfriend didn't agree with who I was going to vote for, so she didn't wake me up.
Yeah.
True story.
So, yeah, thank you again for coming, especially the 3 of you. You know, you're running for office. I very much appreciate that you showed up and got the information.
Appreciate the input.
Yeah. And obviously, Casey, your insight probably trumped mine. So there were probably going to be plenty of gaps there that I would not have been able to convey without you. So I really appreciate you being here. And if anybody actually winds up watching this on the internet, thanks for paying attention.